All right, I found the other book that I wanted to share with you. I think that you might find this interesting. This is kind of more of a written as a storybook and not so much as a textbook. But this story is called Marching with Aunt Susan, and it's an inspiring story of the fight for women's suffrage based on the experiences of a real girl. And here's some ribbons. It says, Votes for Women. Voters for Women. Votes for women. This one is a nice book because it's got some nice looking pictures. Papa took my brothers hiking, but not me. Strenuous exercise is not good for girls, Bessie, he told me. You're not strong enough, Ernie said. It's not ladylike, Charlie added. I can ride my bicycle faster than anyone on the block, I told my brothers, even you. Girls shouldn't ride bicycles either, Charlie said. Inside, Mama bustled around, preparing for a party. I'm strong enough to hike, I said. Papa wouldn't take me along just because I'm a girl. You can help me get ready for the suffrage tea, Mama said. Aunt Mary will be arriving soon with our guest of honor, Miss Susan B. Anthony. Suffrage? I'm the one who's suffering. I picked up the newspaper and stared at Miss Anthony's photo. She looks like a crabby old lady. A crabby old lady who has fought 50 years for women's rights, Mama said, even when people threw garbage at her and called her names. At the tea, everyone swarmed around Miss Anthony. They called her Aunt Susan, even though they weren't related to her. She spoke about the long fight for equal rights. She told us that children should grow up in a world where both men and women were free. Later, Aunt Mary introduced me to Aunt Susan. Why can't girls do the same things as boys? I asked her. She shook her head. When I was your age, my teacher thought only boys were smart enough to learn long division. That's not right, I said. Come to the rally in San Francisco tomorrow, Bessie. Women's votes can help change the world. Golden Gate Auditorium was so crowded that I could barely breathe. Aunt Susan stood on stage, surrounded by hundreds of roses. Her voice thundered across the hall. The votes of all the people, including women with men, will surely bring about the wisest and best government the world has ever seen. I pulled a white handkerchief out of my purse and joined the sea of flags waving in the air. The day after the rally, I rode my bike over to my best friend Rita's house. You should have heard Aunt Susan speak yesterday, I told her. My papa says ladies shouldn't speak in public, Rita said. Aunt Susan says that girls are just as smart as boys. We should get to help make decisions too. Papa decides everything in our family, Rita said. That's not right. I looked at my best friend. Someday I want to vote. Let's see if we can help out at suffrage headquarters. All through the summer, Rita and I wrote letters, licked envelopes, and painted posters. As we worked, we listened to the women talk. Men decide everything. They even decide if we should get a vote. Men decide how the children are raised. Men decide how the household money is spent. I don't understand, I said to Rita. I get to spend my allowance any way I want. And Mama makes decisions about a lot of purchases. Not at our house, Rita shook her head. Papa keeps track of every penny. The week before the election, we visited a factory in San Francisco. Rows and rows of girls sat hunched over, sewing in a dark room. Aunt Susan encouraged them to come to our suffrage parade. Afterward, a girl walked up to Aunt Susan. Me and my sister did some extra sewing to help the campaign. She handed over 2 dimes. If we women win the vote, will I be able to go to school? I leaned against the wall and tried to catch my breath. I couldn't imagine not learning how to read and write. Back at headquarters, I asked Aunt Susan why those girls didn't go to school. Many parents can't make enough money to feed their families, she told me, so they have children to work. Can women getting the vote change that? I asked. Aunt Susan nodded. We can work to pass laws that will help adults and children. I dumped out all the coins in my purse and handed them to her. If those girls can give money, I should too. Later, I painted a picture of the factory girl on a, almost went down. On a banner for the parade. Rita printed the letters. Sunday afternoon before the vote, Rita, Mama, and I marched along carrying our banner. The crowd cheered as we sang new lyrics to My Country 'Tis of Thee. Our country, now from thee, claim we our liberty in freedom's name. Guarding home's altar fires, daughters of patriot sires, their zeal our own inspires, justice to claim. The picture says votes for school for girls and it says suffrage for women and votes for women. But the men began shouting, women belong in the kitchen, girls belong at home. Rita's father appeared and dragged her away. No daughter of mine will parade in the streets. A boy splattered an egg down in front of my white dress. What do you want to be a man? He yelled. I froze, watching the oozing yellow stain spread until Mama picked up Rita's end of the banner and we marched on. When he heard what happened, Papa bought me a new white dress. If only it had been that easy to win the election. Monday after school, Mama and I stood at the ferry launch and held up a new sign. Remember your daughters. Vote yes. I couldn't tell if I got more pats on the head or grumbles from the men walking by, But Mama said, it only matters how they vote tomorrow. Remember your daughter's vote. Your daughters. The day after the election, my brothers raced me home from school. Charlie grabbed the newspaper off the front porch. Women lose the vote, he shouted. I leaned my bicycle against the house and snatched the paper out of his hand. What are you so mad about? Asked Ernie. Someday you'll get to vote, and you won't even care. Mama is as smart as Papa, and I'm as smart as you. We should get to vote too. Mama picked up my bicycle. Aunt Susan says that a bicycle gives a woman freedom. Teach me how to ride, Bessie. It's hard to do, I said, sitting down on the steps. When you first tried to ride, you kept falling. When you first tried to ride, you kept falling and scraping your knees, she reminded me. But you didn't give up. Finally, I showed her what to do, how to mount the bicycle, balance, pedal, and drag her feet. When Papa arrived home, Mama was wobbling down the street. I'm sorry about the election, Bessie, he said. Girls should be allowed to do the same thing as boys, Papa. Why don't we go hiking this Saturday? He asked. And Sunday, there's a rally for the next suffrage campaign, I said, grabbing Papa's hand. Come march with Mama and me. So it looks like the dad is coming with her. Susan B. Anthony, 1820 to 1906. Susan B. Anthony was raised as a Quaker with a belief that men and women are equal. But all around her, she witnessed inequality. Girls who worked at her father's mill couldn't attend school because their families needed their wages. She and the other girls at her school weren't allowed to learn long division. Later, when she became a teacher, she earned only 1/4 the salary of male teachers. All these experiences made her want to work for change. When Anthony was 18 years old, she joined the abolitionist movement. After hearing Lucretia Mott speak out against slavery, in 1851 she met Elizabeth Cady Stanton and became devoted to the cause of women's suffrage. Anthony believed that if women could vote, they could help pass laws to end slavery and to improve working conditions and the lives of the poor. For more than 50 years, Susan B. Anthony led the fight for women's suffrage, along with her friend Elizabeth Cady Stanton. While Stanton wrote speeches and raised a family, Anthony campaigned across the country. She visited California in 1871 and returned several times, including 8 months during the campaign depicted in this book. Even in her later years, Anthony was described as tireless, working night and day. At a celebration of her 86th birthday at the 1906 meeting of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, Susan proclaimed her famous rallying cry, "Failure is impossible." In 1896, one woman reporter said she didn't believe in suffrage until she interviewed Anthony. "I wish I were Susan B. Anthony," she wrote. "There is something lovable in her face and her voice. She is beautiful in her plainness, and her smile is not to be forgotten." Susan B. Anthony died in Rochester on March 13, 1906. Memorial services were held all over the country, including one in San Francisco, during which William Keith's portrait of her was unveiled. After Anthony's death, Bessie's aunt, Mary McHenry Keith, and many other supporters around the country lobbied to make her birthday a national holiday. That never happened, but a gold dollar coin features her likeness. Susan B. Anthony died before all American women won the right to vote in 1920. So she never got to see that she made any difference, did she? She died in 1906, and they won the right to vote in 1920, so that was still a lot of time later. 100 years after her birth, they got the right to vote. But her name is forever linked with a long battle for women's suffrage. And here's some things that you can read about when different states gave the right to vote to women. Our Constitution states that citizens should be allowed to vote, but it doesn't spell out who's considered to be a citizen. That was left up to each state. In the early days of our country, only male landowners were allowed to vote. Men of color won the right to vote with passage of the 15th Amendment in 1870, but women still could not vote. Beginning with the first suffrage convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848, women in every state worked to get the right to vote. The 72-year campaign stretched through 2 wars and 16 presidents. It included 56 states, refund campaigns, 480 campaigns, and I'm going to skip some of that because I think you guys might not care that much about the numbers. In 1878, the Susan B. Anthony Amendment was first introduced to Congress, but it wasn't until 1919 that it finally passed both houses of Congress. In August 1920, Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify the 19th Amendment. 100 years after Susan B. Anthony's birth, women from every state finally gained the right to vote. And the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution says, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." And that means if you're male or female, they can't tell you you can't vote. Congress shall have power to enforce the article by appropriate legislation. And this is a Susan B. Anthony quote down here at the bottom. Yes, I'll tell you what I think of bicycling. I think it has done more to emancipate women than any one thing in the world. I rejoice every time I see a woman ride on a wheel. It gives her a feeling of freedom and self-reliance. And here it looks like are some more resources about if you'd like to know more about women's suffrage and how they won the right to vote, so that now women everywhere in the United States can own land, they can keep the money that they make, and they can have equal rights with every other citizen.